She discovered the betrayal not in whispers, but in Damien's smug grin, and what she did next wasn't revenge, it was brilliance, leaving both him and his mistress reeling while she reclaimed her power and dignity. If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because, tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. Aisha's penthouse overlooked the city like a kingdom she had once felt belonged entirely to her. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the twilight glow, the streets below alive with the pulse of nightlife. The apartment was immaculate, marble floors, sleek furniture, art that whispered wealth and taste. But even this perfection couldn't mask the tension that threaded through her life. Damien, her billionaire husband, occupied every corner of her mind, a man whose charm was matched only by his volatility. She moved slowly across the living room, hand brushing over the curve of her stomach, a subtle reminder of the new life she carried. Her body ached, but not from physical strain. This was emotional weight, the burden of constant vigilance. Damien's temper was unpredictable, his ego colossal. Every smile, every polite gesture, every word had to be measured carefully, lest it spark an outburst she could not contain. Damien appeared at the doorway, impeccably dressed, eyes narrowing slightly as they met hers. "Aisha," he said, voice smooth, but with an undertone that made her pulse tighten. "I need those documents on my desk tonight. And make sure everything is in order for the gala." "I've been on top of it," she replied evenly, though her chest tightened. Her tone was calm, almost rehearsed. She had learned over years that even the smallest misstep could trigger disproportionate anger. His gaze lingered on her, assessing, calculating. "I hope you understand how important it is to maintain appearances," he said, voice laced with warning. "Our reputation depends on flawless execution." Aisha's lips pressed together. She understood perfectly. But beneath the veneer of control and luxury lay an emptiness, a subtle ache she had long ignored. She loved Damien once, perhaps still did, but the betrayal was simmering, barely hidden. Across town, whispers of Damien's affair had begun circulating. A friend's text blinked on her phone. "Be careful. I think Vivian isn't just a rumor." Aisha's heart sank, a flicker of fear mingling with disbelief. She swiped the message away, determined not to let gossip dictate her life, but the thought refused to leave her mind. That evening, preparations for the gala filled the apartment with activity. Stylists, assistants, and staff moving like clockwork. Damien's presence was constant, a silent monitor, his approval and ire hanging over every decision. Aisha navigated the chaos with poise, a mask perfected through necessity. Every step, every gesture, was deliberate. She smiled at the staff, corrected minor errors, and maintained composure, all while processing the gnawing knowledge of betrayal. In a quiet moment, she retreated to the terrace, the wind tugging gently at her hair. The city sprawled below, lights twinkling like stars. She inhaled deeply, grounding herself. Her thoughts wandered not to glamour or wealth, but to trust, once given freely, now fractured. Her mind, sharp and strategic, began plotting how she would respond if the rumors were true. She refused to be a victim. She refused to be invisible. The gala arrived, and Aisha moved through the crowd with elegance, aware of every glance, every whisper. Damien lingered beside her, charming, magnetic, yet with an edge she could not ignore. Across the room, Vivian's laugh reached her ears, a subtle, provocative sound, a signal of the chaos already infiltrating her carefully constructed life. Aisha's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but her posture remained perfect, smile unwavering. Inside, her mind whirred. Damien's betrayal was no longer just a thought. It was tangible, a presence hovering at every corner, challenging her composure. Yet beneath fear and anger, a spark ignited. She would not falter. She would not crumble. She would respond, and when she did, it would be with precision, intelligence, and power. The first act of transformation had begun, not in confrontation, but in awareness. Aisha realized that wealth, status, and appearances were irrelevant compared to control over her own life. She could survive Damien's deceit, and she could turn it to her advantage. The night was just beginning, but the storm of betrayal and brilliance was already stirring. The gala was in full swing, chandeliers casting glimmering reflections across polished floors. Laughter and music swirled through the grand hall, a mask of celebration that barely concealed tension. Aisha moved gracefully, greeting guests with practiced smiles, every step deliberate, every gesture measured. Her mind, however, was elsewhere, tracing whispered rumors, fleeting glances, and subtle interactions. Then she saw him. Damien stood near the bar, a tall silhouette of confidence, eyes locking with Vivian's across the room. Aisha's stomach tightened, not from the pregnancy, but from the sting of betrayal laid bare. Vivian's laugh, light and deliberate, carried across the hall, sharp and provocative. The realization hit like ice. Damien had been flaunting his affair in the most audacious, public way. A hush seemed to descend. Guests turned, sensing the tension radiating from the trio. Aisha's heartbeat thumped, echoing in her ears, as shock, humiliation, and anger collided within her. She had anticipated rumors, whispered conversations, but nothing could have prepared her for this vivid, undeniable confirmation. Damien's charm, once comforting, now felt suffocating and cruel. Vivian approached Damien, their proximity intimate, gestures deliberate. Aisha's chest tightened, each movement a reminder of betrayal and audacity. She clenched her hands lightly at her sides, forcing herself to remain composed. Every instinct screamed to confront, to lash out, but she knew that control was her weapon, not panic. Damien caught her gaze across the room, momentarily startled, but quickly masked the flicker of surprise with his signature smile. "Aisha," he said, voice smooth, carrying charm that now felt hollow, almost mocking. Aisha stepped forward, a deliberate movement that drew attention without aggression. "Damien," she said, voice even but laced with steel. "Care to explain why the mistress is the center of attention tonight?" Her words cut through the music and chatter like a blade, exposing the audacity that had gone unchecked for too long. Vivian's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, replaced by a subtle flash of uncertainty. The public setting, the poised challenge, and the controlled intensity in Aisha's gaze created an invisible barrier, asserting dominance without physical action. Damien's composure wavered under the scrutiny of the room. His charm could no longer shield him from exposure. The guests murmured, sensing the undercurrent of betrayal now visible in Aisha's posture, in the controlled fire behind her eyes. Humiliation began to chip away at his previously untouchable presence. Aisha continued, voice steady, each word measured. "This is a public event, Damien. But your choices are not private. They affect everyone around you, including me." The power of her statement lay not in anger, but in control, strategy, and clarity. She refused to react emotionally. Instead, she transformed betrayal into authority. Vivian, realizing the shift, took a subtle step back, the illusion of dominance slipping. Aisha's calm yet commanding presence forced both Damien and Vivian into unfamiliar territory, accountability and exposure. The crowd, initially oblivious, now sensed the shift. Whispers, glances, and subtle gasps punctuated the air, highlighting the social impact of the revelation. Aisha's heartbeat slowed slightly as the first stage of confrontation settled. Shock, humiliation, and betrayal remained, but she had transformed them into awareness and calculated control. Damien's flirtation with audacity had backfired. Her poise, intellect, and strategic restraint left him off balance, powerless in the face of the very person he had sought to dominate. By the end of the evening, Aisha had emerged visibly unshaken, though inside the storm of emotions still raged. The collision of betrayal had occurred publicly, emotionally, and socially. Damien's charm was stripped to reveal fragility. Vivian's confidence had faltered. And Aisha, despite the pain, had reclaimed agency, dignity, and control, turning a moment of humiliation into the opening act of empowerment. After the gala, Aisha returned to her apartment, the city lights below a glittering reminder of wealth and status, but also of the emptiness that accompanied betrayal. Damien's actions lingered in her mind, each glance, each smirk, and Vivian's provocative laughter replaying like a loop she could not escape. Anger, disbelief, and humiliation warred inside her, coiling tight and leaving her restless, sleepless, and on edge. She poured herself a glass of water, hands trembling slightly, and stared out the window. Her reflection in the glass stared back, eyes sharp, jaw set, yet haunted by the sting of betrayal. The life she had trusted, the man she had loved, had shown its fragility. For a moment, the apartment felt smaller, every corner heavy with the weight of what Damien's choices had wrought. A soft knock at the door startled her. It was her assistant, a quiet, loyal presence who had helped manage the facade of perfection for years. "Aisha, are you okay?" the assistant asked gently. The question, simple yet caring, reminded Aisha that she didn't have to face the aftermath alone, yet the instinct to retreat was strong. "I'm managing," Aisha said evenly, voice firm, though her hands lingered over her belly, subconsciously seeking reassurance. "But I need space to think." Left alone, she sank onto the sofa, mind racing. Every instinct screamed retaliation, confront Damien, expose Vivian, reclaim authority in the public eye. Yet another part of her understood that impulsive action could backfire, compromise her control, and damage her long-term strategy. Her strength lay not in immediate reaction but in deliberate planning. Across town, Damien entertained himself with arrogance, assuming the evening had not diminished his hold over Aisha or their social standing. He didn't yet understand that humiliation, subtle and public, had shifted the balance. For once, his power was being tested, not by money, influence, or fear, but by the intelligence, composure, and resolve of the woman he had underestimated. Aisha reviewed the events mentally, mapping out her options. Confrontation could expose her own vulnerability, silence could be interpreted as submission. She recognized that her most potent response required patience, restraint, and strategic action, transforming humiliation into authority, betrayal into leverage, and emotional pain into strength. As night deepened, she drafted plans, not just for social maneuvering, but for reclaiming her autonomy, legal consultations, professional alliances, and steps toward independence from Damien's control. Each note she wrote, each calculated thought, grounded her in reality and reminded her that she was capable of shaping her own narrative. Ethan reached out later, having heard about the gala's revelations. His message was calm, steady, and supportive. Take the time you need. Don't let anger dictate your choices. You have strength beyond what they understand. Aisha read the words carefully, a faint smile breaking through the tension. Trusting someone again felt delicate, yet his presence offered a model of respect and partnership she had not experienced with Damien. By the early hours, Aisha realized her internal resistance had begun to shift. Fear still lingered, anger still burned, but she no longer felt powerless. The humiliation Damien had sought to impose had been transformed by her composure and strategic thinking. Resistance, she understood, was not about confrontation alone. It was about reclaiming control, making deliberate choices, and setting the stage for empowerment. Her gaze lingered on the city skyline. The world below was still dazzling, still indifferent, yet Aisha felt the first tremors of agency within her. The betrayal had not broken her. It had revealed the necessity of resilience, careful strategy, and emotional fortitude. As she rested briefly, hand brushing her belly, she whispered to herself, "I will not let this define me. I will choose my response. I will reclaim my life." In the silence, she felt the faintest pulse of confidence, a promise that her next move would be calculated, powerful, and unforgettable. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and faint perfume, an atmosphere of quiet power that contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions swirling in Aisha's mind. Damien sat at the head of the table, exuding confidence and entitlement, while Vivian perched nearby, a calculated smirk playing on her lips. Every subtle glance, every carefully placed word, was designed to assert dominance, but Aisha had learned that control could be claimed without raising a voice. Ethan accompanied her, seated slightly behind, a steady presence that radiated support without intrusion. His calm, observant gaze reinforced the sense that Aisha could navigate this encounter strategically, relying on her intelligence and poise rather than confrontation alone. "You're both here," Damien said smoothly, eyes flicking to Aisha and then Vivian. "Let's settle this professionally." His tone was polite, but the undercurrent of superiority was unmistakable. Aisha drew a deep breath, feeling the tension coil in her chest. She could retreat, she could react impulsively, but neither option would preserve her dignity or serve her purpose. Instead, she allowed herself to exude calm authority, her posture perfect, eyes steady. "Yes," she said evenly. "We'll proceed with clarity. I expect honesty and accountability from everyone in this room." Vivian's smirk faltered for the first time. The room, though professional, became a subtle battleground. Aisha's composure contrasted sharply with the audacity of her rivals. She realized that forced proximity, unavoidable as it was, provided an opportunity to assert control, to demonstrate intelligence, and to reveal the true stakes of betrayal. The meeting unfolded with deliberate formality. Legalities were discussed, contracts reviewed, and responsibilities clarified. Aisha's words were measured, precise, and impactful. She addressed Damien directly, not with anger, but with pointed authority. "Your decisions affect more than yourself. I expect acknowledgement of the consequences." Ethan offered quiet support, occasionally providing factual clarifications or confirming details, never overshadowing Aisha's voice. His presence underscored a critical lesson: support and respect can empower without dominating, a stark contrast to the fear and manipulation she had endured. Vivian attempted subtle interruptions, remarks intended to provoke or undermine, but each was met with calm, measured rebuttals from Aisha. Every exchange reinforced her growing authority. The mistress, who had once dominated through audacity, was now constrained by the sheer clarity and composure of her target. By the midpoint of the meeting, Damien's confidence wavered. His attempts to assert superiority were deflected with poise and logic. Each deliberate decision Aisha made, each calm articulation of expectation, shifted the power dynamic. For the first time, Damien confronted a reality in which fear, charm, and wealth could not dictate outcomes. Aisha recognized the subtle transformation in the room. Forced connection, once a source of dread, had become a tool. She was not merely responding, she was orchestrating the encounter, demonstrating that intelligence, strategy, and composure could reclaim power even in the most uncomfortable circumstances. The meeting concluded with formal acknowledgement from Damien and Vivian. There was no dramatic outburst, no public humiliation, but the shift was unmistakable. The forced interaction had revealed capability, authority, and the beginnings of empowerment. Aisha had navigated fear, social scrutiny, and manipulation with a quiet, deliberate grace. Later, walking with Ethan through the quiet streets, Aisha exhaled slowly, tension easing. "It wasn't easy," she admitted, "but I realized something today. Control isn't about aggression or fear, it's about clarity, strategy, and knowing your worth." Ethan smiled, his hand brushing lightly against hers. "Exactly. And you handled it with brilliance. This is just the beginning, but you've already reclaimed so much." The night air felt lighter, freer. Aisha's mind was no longer clouded by humiliation or rage. It was clear, focused, and intentional. Forced connection had evolved from threat into opportunity. She understood now that her next moves, deliberate and controlled, could reshape the narrative entirely. Have you ever been forced into a situation with someone who wronged you and discovered unexpected strength? Share your experience in the comments. Sometimes the toughest encounters reveal the most power. The conference hall was silent, the murmur of attendees fading as Aisha stepped forward. Every eye followed her, some curious, some expectant, unaware of the storm she carried beneath her calm exterior. Damien sat rigid at the front, his confidence still intact, or so he believed, while Vivian's smug expression faltered under the weight of anticipation. Aisha's pulse steadied. This was her moment, not born of vengeance, but of deliberate authority. Every decision she had made since discovering the betrayal had led to this point, a public, undeniable demonstration of intelligence, strategy, and control. She would reclaim power in a way that left no doubt about her agency. Damien cleared his throat, attempting to mask uncertainty with his usual charm. Aisha, perhaps we should. No, she interrupted smoothly, her voice steady and commanding. There will be no deflection, no manipulation. Every action, every choice has consequences. Today, we acknowledge them. Her gaze swept the room, sharp and deliberate, landing on both Damien and Vivian. The social power they had wielded through arrogance and audacity was now fractured by precision and composure. Vivian's lips pressed into a thin line. She had counted on shock, intimidation, and charm to maintain control, but Aisha's calm authority disrupted the balance. Every calculated pause, measured word, and subtle gesture reinforced the shift. For the first time, the mistress faced a woman who would not flinch, who would not be overshadowed. Aisha reached for a document on the podium, contracts, emails, and undeniable proof of betrayal and mismanagement. She laid them out clearly, each paper a reflection of consequences: financial errors, misused resources, and social exposure. Damien's jaw tightened as the evidence illuminated his failures, his audacity, and his attempts at concealment. The room hummed with tension. Attendees whispered, cameras flashed, and the air vibrated with the unspoken realization that power rooted in deception was now exposed. Aisha's composure contrasted starkly with Damien's unraveling demeanor. Every misstep, every concealment, was laid bare under her strategic orchestration. Vivian's confidence crumbled further. She realized that Aisha's brilliance and calm had rendered her provocations ineffective. The social leverage she had relied on was gone. Now, she faced not just exposure but the undeniable clarity that her dominance had been an illusion. Aisha's final words carried weight far beyond the documents on display. Actions have consequences. Betrayal, arrogance, and deception can only go so far before truth asserts itself. Let this serve as a reminder: dignity, intelligence, and composure cannot be undermined by fear or audacity. Silence followed, thick and charged. Damien sat, stunned, unable to summon charm or threats. The aura of control he had relied upon was shattered. Vivian, humbled, retreated into discomfort, no longer confident in her positioning. And Aisha stood, unwavering, radiating authority, intellect, and empowerment. Ethan, standing quietly to the side, allowed her the spotlight. His presence was supportive yet unobtrusive, reinforcing her autonomy without overshadowing it. The partnership between them was unspoken but unmistakable: respect, trust, and alignment grounded in equality. By the time the hall emptied, the impact was palpable. Attendees whispered about Aisha's composure, her strategic brilliance, and the audacity of reclaiming power so decisively. Damien and Vivian left marked, exposed not through chaos or anger, but through the clarity of Aisha's deliberate and controlled actions. Later, walking with Ethan through quiet streets, Aisha allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. The tension and fear that had weighed so heavily were still present, but they no longer defined her. She had taken the moment of collision and transformed it into authority, social dominance, and emotional liberation. "I can't believe how clear it feels," she said softly, hand brushing her belly, the reminder of life, resilience, and responsibility grounding her. "I finally see that control isn't about fear, it's about precision, patience, and knowing your worth." Ethan smiled, his hand brushing lightly against hers. "Exactly. You've shown strength, intelligence, and power. This is just the beginning, but you've already reclaimed so much." Aisha exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the breaking point shift into clarity and empowerment. The storm of betrayal, fear, and humiliation had been confronted, and the world, public, social, and personal, was now unmistakably aware. She was no longer the victim. She was the orchestrator, the strategist, the one who would determine the terms of her life moving forward. Aisha returned to her apartment later that evening. The city skyline stretched beneath her like a tapestry of light. The gala, the confrontation, and the public exposure had left Damien and Vivian shaken, but for Aisha, the evening was not about victory alone. It was about clarity. Every choice she had made since discovering the betrayal had led to this moment, the deliberate decision to define her own path. She sank onto the edge of her sofa, hand resting lightly on her stomach, feeling the tiny, steady stirrings of new life. The pulse of courage within her mirrored the rhythm of hope growing inside. For months, fear had dictated her movements, anger had sharpened her edges, and humiliation had threatened to cloud her mind. Now, she recognized the power in intentional choice. Ethan appeared, his presence calm and unintrusive, yet reassuring. "How do you feel?" he asked softly, eyes steady and warm. "Empowered," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Not from revenge or humiliation, but from clarity. I've realized that my life, my choices, and my dignity are mine to command." He nodded, understanding without question. "Then this next step is yours to take. Whatever you decide, I'll support you without taking control." Aisha's gaze drifted to the balcony, the lights below shimmering like stars reflected in water. She thought of Damien, how his arrogance had blinded him, how Vivian's audacity had thrived on fear and manipulation. And yet she also thought of the lessons she had learned: patience, strategy, resilience, and the undeniable truth that her worth was not determined by the betrayal she endured. She exhaled slowly, acknowledging the spectrum of emotions still present: anger, grief, and lingering fear, but refusing to let them dictate her next steps. The decision was clear. She would not return to a life of subservience or manipulation. She would embrace independence, assert her boundaries, and open herself only to genuine love and respect. Turning to Ethan, she spoke with deliberate clarity. "I choose my life on my terms. I choose safety, dignity, and partnership built on trust, not fear or control. And I want to move forward with someone who respects me entirely." Ethan's smile was quiet, filled with acknowledgement and unwavering support. "Then we begin together, with that as our foundation." His words carried no obligation, only affirmation of her autonomy and deliberate choice. The night stretched on as Aisha finalized plans for her personal and professional independence, legal steps, financial arrangements, and strategic planning to ensure Damien's influence would remain limited. Each action reinforced the deliberate decisions she had made, transforming fear into power and betrayal into clarity. By the early hours, Aisha allowed herself a moment of reflection, hand brushing gently over her belly. "I survived. I reclaimed myself. And now I choose joy, love, and respect," she whispered. Every word was a testament to growth, resilience, and the conscious shaping of her future. Damien's absence had become absolute. His attempts to assert control were met with professional and personal boundaries, leaving him exposed to the consequences of arrogance and infidelity. Vivian's provocation had been neutralized by Aisha's strategic composure, her confidence, and the social leverage she now wielded through dignity and clarity. Aisha rose, feeling lighter yet resolute. The choices ahead were hers entirely. Every decision, whether personal, professional, or emotional, would reflect her values and her strength. Independence was not a punishment for Damien or Vivian, it was a declaration of self-worth and the deliberate embrace of a life she had earned. Later, Ethan stood beside her on the balcony, the city lights flickering beneath them. "You've made the hardest choices already," he said softly. "The rest is just building the life you deserve." Aisha nodded, feeling a serene determination wash over her. She had faced betrayal, public humiliation, and fear. She had resisted impulsive reactions, exercised patience, and asserted authority. Now, she stood fully in control, her choices deliberate, her path defined by courage, and her heart open only to love that honored her strength. The morning sunlight spilled across the terrace, illuminating the city below in a wash of gold and rose. Aisha stood with her hands lightly resting on her stomach, the gentle curve a reminder of resilience and life thriving despite adversity. The weeks of betrayal, humiliation, and strategic maneuvering had culminated in this moment: clarity, empowerment, and deliberate triumph. Ethan joined her, calm and steady, his presence a reassuring counterpoint to the chaos she had endured. "Ready for the next chapter?" he asked softly. Aisha turned, a faint smile curving her lips. I am. This time, everything I do, every choice, every step, is mine. No fear, no control, only life on my terms. The ceremony was intimate, set in a rooftop garden adorned with subtle, elegant decorations. Friends and family gathered in quiet anticipation, their whispers blending with the gentle breeze. Unlike the gala that had once symbolized betrayal, this gathering radiated authenticity, respect, and celebration of resilience. Damien and Vivian were absent, removed by circumstance and consequence. The power that had once been wielded through arrogance, intimidation, and manipulation had dissipated, leaving only exposure and accountability. Their absence was not a void, but a testament. Control through deceit could never withstand clarity, intelligence, and deliberate agency. Aisha's father stepped forward, a warm smile breaking across his face. "You've become stronger than I imagined," he whispered. "I'm proud of the woman you are." Tears welled in Aisha's eyes, but they were not of fear or sorrow. They were relief, triumph, and quiet joy. "Thank you," she said softly, "for believing in me when I doubted myself." Ethan took her hand, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "We're starting this together," he said, his voice steady. "Every choice, every decision, side by side, but on your terms." The city shimmered beneath them, lights reflecting like tiny stars. Every past struggle, the public betrayal, Damien's arrogance, Vivian's provocations, had been a crucible forging strength, clarity, and composure. Aisha's life was now defined not by fear or revenge, but by intentionality, courage, and love chosen deliberately. As vows were exchanged, they carried weight far beyond tradition. They spoke of trust, partnership, and mutual respect, each word a declaration that Aisha's future would no longer be dictated by manipulation or deceit. Every phrase resonated with resilience, autonomy, and empowerment. The ceremony ended with subtle applause, warm and genuine. Friends embraced, sharing quiet congratulations and admiration. The energy was one of support, celebration, and recognition of triumph born from intelligence, patience, and strategy. Later, walking along the terrace with Ethan, Aisha allowed herself a deep breath, exhaling tension and lingering remnants of fear. "Feels right," she murmured, head resting lightly on his shoulder. "It is," he said softly, "because this time, every step, every choice belongs to you. And I'm here for all of it." The evening breeze carried the faint scent of flowers and distant city hum, grounding the moment in reality while echoing the journey that had brought her here. Aisha's hands rested on her stomach, feeling the steady stirrings of new life, a reminder of growth, resilience, and the fruits of deliberate action. Damien's absence, Vivian's humiliation, and the public exposure of their arrogance reinforced the consequences of betrayal. But the true victory was Aisha's: emotional autonomy, strategic brilliance, and the knowledge that she had reclaimed her narrative. Aisha smiled faintly, whispering to herself, "I survived, I reclaimed my power, and I chose life and love on my terms." The words were affirmation, triumph, and resolve intertwined, a declaration that the past no longer controlled her. Ethan pressed a gentle kiss to her temple, a silent promise of partnership, respect, and steadfast support. Together, they stood overlooking the city, each heartbeat syncing with hope, courage, and deliberate choice. The night closed around them in quiet serenity. The lessons of betrayal, humiliation, and fear had been transformed into empowerment, strategic clarity, and authentic love. Aisha had faced adversity, resisted impulsive reactions, and emerged triumphant, not through vengeance, but through composure, intelligence, and deliberate action. Have you ever reclaimed your life after betrayal, transforming pain into strength and empowerment? Share your story in the comments. Your courage could inspire someone to take the first step toward freedom and self-respect. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.